Well, are you ready to get into Yah's Word today? I am as well. I want to invite you to open your Bibles with me to Exodus chapter 7. We're going to begin with verse 1 in just a moment, and we are tracking along with the Torah portion for this week, and I've entitled this message, Lying Wonders and the Deception of the End Times. And so this narrative of Exodus chapter 7, chapter 8, chapter 9 and following really is a picture of what's going to take place in the end times. And chapter 7, chapter 8, and chapter 9 especially teach us about the lying wonders that are going to take place. The Anti-Mashiach and the false prophet, empowered by Hasatan, will perform all manner of lying wonders. And we see it here in this narrative. We have Paro, who represents the little e, the lowercase e, Elohim of this world. Hasatan, and he's holding the children of Israel in captivity, in bondage, in slavery. And that slavery represents the slavery of sin. We have Moshe, who's a picture of Yeshua, who was sent by Yah to deliver the people of the world from their slavery to sin. We have Aharon, who is Moshe's prophet. And so he pictures the prophetic end time set apart ones, the believers who will be proclaiming Yeshua in the last days. And then we have the Egyptian magicians, the magicians of Mitzrayim, and they represent the false prophet and the Anti-Mashiach. And we're going to see that they're going to go toe-to-toe with Moshe and Aharon in the beginning, and they're going to do lying wonders. They're going to use their magic to copy or to emulate the miracles, the true miracles of Yah through Moshe and Aharon. Their miracles are not true. They are only a copy. They're deceptive. They are lying wonders. And so we're going to talk about that today in this message. Let's begin with Exodus chapter 7 and verse 1. It says, So Yah said to Moshe, See, I have made you an Elohim. That's a lowercase e, Elohim, to Paro, and Aharon, your brother, is your prophet. As we said last week in our message, that the Bible calls certain men Elohim, little e, Elohim. If you are a prophet or a sovereign or a judge, someone who represents the Father in a powerful way, then the Bible could call you an Elohim. And so this is Yah actually saying to Moshe that he has made Moshe an Elohim to Paro. It also said in another passage that he made Moshe an Elohim to Aharon. But here it says, and Aharon, your brother, is your prophet. You shall speak all that I command you, and Aharon, your brother, shall speak to Paro to let the children of Israel go out of his land. But I am going to harden the heart of Paro, and shall increase my signs and my wonders in the land of Mitzrayim. So Yah is saying, I'm going to do true signs and wonders, the supernatural, the miraculous. And I'm going to reveal myself to Paro and all of the land of Mitzrayim by performing these signs and wonders. It says, and Paro is not going to listen to you, and I shall lay my hand on Mitzrayim. That means I'm going to judge Mitzrayim. So he's going to judge Mitzrayim. He's going to judge all the false mighty ones of Mitzrayim and bring my divisions and my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Mitzrayim by great judgments. He's talking about the plagues that are coming. And the Mitzrayites shall know that I am Yah. So he wants to declare himself to the Mitzrayites that he is Yah. When I stretch out my hand on Mitzrayim, when I judge Mitzrayim, and I shall bring the children of Israel out from among them. And Moshe and Aharon did as Yah commanded them, so they did. Now Moshe was 80 years old and Aharon 83 years old when they spoke to Paro. So you're never too old to do the will of the Father. And Yah spoke to Moshe and to Aharon, saying, when Paro speaks to you, saying, show a miracle for yourselves. In other words, prove to me that you are significant. Prove to me that your mighty one is powerful. Show a miracle for yourselves. Then you shall say to Aharon, take your rod and throw it before Paro, and let it become a serpent. So Moshe and Aharon went in to Paro, and they did so as Yah commanded. And Aharon threw his rod before Paro and before his servants, and it became a serpent. But Paro also called the wise men and the practicers of witchcraft, and they, the magicians of Mitzrayim, also did so with their magic. And so they didn't create anything. They didn't do anything unique. They only copied what Moshe and Aharon had done. And so they used deception. They used witchcraft. They used magic, dark arts, so to speak, to only copy what the Creator had done. And so we can see in this passage that, yes, the magicians had some level of dark power, but it didn't match up with the creative power of Yah, our Elohim. And so, yes, they were able to deceive those who were there. And it appeared that what they were doing was on the same level with Moshe and Aharon. It says, and they, each one, threw down his rod, and they became serpents. But the rod of Aharon swallowed up their rods. That one sentence is very telling. From the very beginning, we're seeing a pattern that's developing here, and that is, even though the magicians are trying to copy the miracles, the signs and the wonders of Moshe and Aharon, it will always be that the miracles of Moshe and Aharon will be more powerful because Yah, our Elohim, is our creator. He's created all things, and he is El Shaddai. He is the Almighty. He is all powerful. And even though it appears that Hasatan and those Hasatan empowers may have some dark power, certainly, they will never be a match for Yah and his representatives. It says, and Paro's heart was strengthened, and he did not listen to them, as Yah had said. So when Paro saw that his magicians could do something similar through deceptive signs and wonders, then he wouldn't listen to Moshe and Aharon anymore. He's like, oh, well, my magicians do the same things. It says, and Yah said to Moshe, the heart of Paro is hard. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Paro in the morning as he goes out to the water, and you shall stand by the river's bank to meet him. And take in your hand the rod which was turned into a serpent. And you shall say to him, Yah, the Elohim of the Hebrews, has sent me to you, saying, let my people go, so that they serve me in the wilderness. But see, until now you have not listened. Thus said Yah, by this you know that I am Yah. See, I am striking the waters which are in the river with the rod that is in my hand, and they shall be turned to blood. And the fish in the river shall die, and the river shall stink, and the Mitzrites shall find it impossible to drink the water of the river. And Yah spoke to Moshe, say to Aharon, take your rod and stretch out your hand over the waters of Mitzrayim, over their streams, over their rivers, over their ponds, and over all their pools of water, that they become blood. And there shall be blood in all the land of Mitzrayim, both in wooden and in stone containers. So in every container where there's water, that water will become blood. And Moshe and Aharon did so as Yah commanded. And he lifted up the rod and struck the waters that were in the river in the eyes of Paro and in the eyes of his servants. And all the waters that were in the river were turned to blood. A powerful, powerful sign. And the fish that were in the river died, and the river stank, and the Mitzrites were unable to drink the water of the river. And the blood was in all the land of Mitzrayim, and the magicians of Mitzrayim did the same with their magic. And so we see as it begins, the magicians of Mitzrayim are going toe-to-toe with Moshe and Aharon. It's hard to discern which one is the true sign and which one is the lying wonder here in the beginning. But we're going to see that the magicians are not going to be able to keep up with the creative miracle power of Yah through Moshe and Aharon. It says, and the magicians of Mitzrayim did the same with their magic. And the heart of Paro was strengthened, and he did not listen to them as Yah had said. And so Paro is wanting to be convinced that the Elohim of the Hebrews is more powerful than the magic of the Egyptian magicians. And with these first two miracles, these first two signs, the magicians were able to keep up with Moshe and Aharon. So Paro, his heart was hardened over that. And Paro turned and went into his house, and his heart was not moved by this either. And all the Mitzrites dug all around the river for water to drink, for they were unable to drink the water of the river, and 7 days were completed after Yah had struck the river. Now let's continue in chapter 8. And Yah spoke to Moshe, go to Paro and say to him, thus said Yah, let my people go so that they serve me. But if you refuse to let them go, see, I am smiting all your border with frogs. Well, it's interesting. The scripture says that Yah judged the mighty ones of Egypt or of Mitzrayim. And they worshiped the Nile River. Well, he turned the Nile into blood. They also had a false mighty one of a frog. And so he's judging the frogs. It says, but if you refuse to let them go, see, I am smiting all your border with frogs. I'm more powerful than that frog mighty one. And the river shall swarm with frogs, which shall go up and shall come into your house and into your bedroom and on your bed and into the houses of your servants and on your people and into your ovens and into your kneading bowls. This is serious. And the frogs shall come up on you and on your people and on all your servants. And Yah said to Moshe, say to Aharon, stretch out your hand with your rod over the streams, over the rivers, and over the ponds, and cause frogs to come up on the land of Mitzrayim. So Aharon stretched out his hand over the waters of Mitzrayim, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Mitzrayim. Notice, and the magicians did so with their magic, and brought up frogs on the land of Mitzrayim. So again, in this third sign of bringing up the frogs, the magicians did so with their magic. In other words, they did a deceptive sign. It appeared that they could do the same. Lying wonders is what we're talking about today. and the deception of the end times. It says, and the magicians did so with their magic and brought up frogs on the land of Mitzrayim. Paro then called for Moshe and Aharon and said, pray to Yah to take away the frogs from me and from my people, and I shall let the people go to slaughter to Yah. And so the magicians were able to bring up the frogs, but at this point, Paro goes to Moshe and to Aharon, and he said, pray to Yah to get rid of the frogs. We want these frogs out of here. We want them out of our houses. We want them out of our ovens. We want them out of our bowls. We want them off of our persons. We just want these frogs out of here. And so Paro goes to Moshe and Aharon and asks them to pray that Yah would take away the frogs. So we're starting to see a little bit of a turning in Paro's thinking. And Moshe said to Paro, explain yourself to me. When am I to pray for you and for your servants and for your people to destroy the frogs from you and your houses and remain only in the river? When do you want me to pray that Yah would take away the frogs? Now, I don't know about Paro, but if it were me, I would say right now. Who wants to spend another night with the frogs? But notice Paro's answer here. So he said, tomorrow. And he said, let it be according to your word. And so Moshe said, all right, you want it to be tomorrow? Then we'll do it tomorrow. Let it be according to your word, so that you know that there is no one like Yah our Elohim. So your magicians can't match Yah our Elohim. And so Yah our Elohim will take away the frogs tomorrow, and you'll know that Yah is Almighty. And the frogs shall turn aside from you, and from your houses, and from your servants, and from your people. They shall remain in the river only. And Moshe and Aharon went out from Paro, and Moshe cried out to Yah concerning the frogs which he had brought against Paro. And Yah did according to the word of Moshe, and the frogs died out of the houses, out of the courtyards, and out of the fields, and they gathered them together in heaps, and the land stank. And when Paro saw that there was relief, he hardened his heart and did not listen to them, as Yah had said. Yah said he wouldn't listen, that his heart would be hard. And Yah said to Moshe, say to Aharon, stretch out your rod and strike the dust of the land, so that it becomes gnats in all the land of Mitzrayim. And they did so. And Aharon stretched out his hand with his rod and struck the dust of the earth, and it became gnats on man and beast. I've been in some pretty rough places where swarms of gnats were all around me, and that's miserable to have gnats flying all in your face. Well, my experience is nothing like what happened in Mitzrayim here. Again, it says, and they did so, and Aharon stretched out his hand with his rod and struck the dust of the earth, and it became gnats on man and beast. All the dust of the land became gnats in all the land of Mitzrayim. Can you imagine that? In all the land of Mitzrayim, all the dust became gnats. And the magicians did similarly with their magic to bring forth gnats. Notice, but they were unable. They got to the end of their magical powers. They got to the end of their lying wonders. They couldn't keep up with Yah, our Creator, who's all-powerful, almighty. And so they were unable to bring forth gnats from the dust of the earth. And there were gnats on man and beast. And the magicians then said to Paro, this is the finger of Elohim. We can't do any more. We've gotten to the end of our ability. This is the finger of Elohim. But the heart of Paro was strengthened, And he did not listen to them, as Yah had said. And Yah said to Moshe, rise early in the morning and stand before Paro as he comes out to the water, and say to him, thus said Yah, let my people go, so that they serve me. Or else, if you do not let my people go, see, I am sending swarms of flies on you and your servants, and on your people, and into your houses. And the houses of the Mitzrites shall be filled with swarms of flies, and also the ground on which they stand. And in that day I shall separate, this is so important, and in that day I shall separate the land of Goshen, that's where the children of Israel lived, in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there, so that you know that I am Yah in the midst of the land. In other words, I'm going to bring swarms of flies all over the land, except for Goshen, where my people dwell. I'm going to keep them safe from my wrath as I pour it out upon Egypt. Now, we can learn from this, because this is exactly what's going to happen in the end times. Yah is going to pour out his wrath on the unbelievers, on the evil people, on the unrighteous. But he's going to keep safe his set-apart ones. It says, and I shall put a ransom between my people and your people. Tomorrow this sign shall be. And Yah did so. And thick swarms of flies came into the house of Paro, and into his servants' houses, and into all the land of Mitzrayim, and the land was ruined because of the swarms of flies. Paro then called for Moshe and Aharon and said, go slaughter to your Elohim in the land. And so let's look down at verse 29. And Moshe said, see, when I leave you, I shall pray to Yah, and tomorrow the swarms of flies shall depart from Paro, from his servants, and from his people. But do not let Paro again deceive, not to let the people go to slaughter to Yah. And Moshe went out from Paro and prayed to Yah. And Yah did according to the word of Moshe, and removed the swarms of flies from Paro, from his servants, and from his people. Not one remained. But Paro hardened his heart at this time too, and did not let the people go. All right. Now let's continue in chapter 9. It says, and Yah said to Moshe, go into Paro and speak to him. Thus said Yah Elohim of the Hebrews, let my people go, so that they serve me. For if you refuse to let them go, and are still holding them, see, the hand of Yah is on your livestock in the field, on the horses, on the donkeys, on the camels, on the cattle, and on the sheep, a very grievous pestilence. And Yah shall separate between the livestock of Israel. Here it is again. You have to understand this point. And Yah shall separate between the livestock of Israel and the livestock of Mitzrayim, and let no matter die of all that belongs to the children of Israel. He's going to place a difference between his children, the children of Israel, and the Mitzrites, or the Egyptians. There's going to be a difference. He's going to place a difference between the righteous and the unrighteous. And Yah set an appointed time, saying, tomorrow Yah is going to do this word in the land. And Yah did this word on the next day, and all the livestock of Mitzrayim died. But of the livestock of the children of Israel, not one died. Then Paro sent, and see, not even one of the livestock of Israel was dead, but the heart of Paro was hardened, and he did not let the people go. And Yah said to Moshe and Aharon, fill your hands with ashes from the furnace, and let Moshe scatter it toward the heavens before the eyes of Paro. And it shall become fine dust in all the land of Mitzrayim, and it shall cause boils that break out in sores on man and beast in all the land of Mitzrayim. So they took ashes from the furnace and stood before Paro, and Moshe scattered them toward the heavens, and they caused boils breaking out in sores on man and beast. Now, look at this next verse. This is very telling. And the magicians were unable to stand before Moshe because of the boils. The magicians themselves were stricken with boils. They were suffering from this plague. They couldn't even stand before Moshe because they had boils all over their bodies. The very ones who had performed lying wonders, the ones who were deceiving the people, thinking that they were just as powerful as Moshe and Aharon. Now they're covered in boils. They have sores all over their bodies, and they can't even stand before Moshe and Aharon. It says, and the magicians were unable to stand before Moshe because of the boils, for the boils were on the magicians and on all the Mitzrites. Well, that ought to encourage you that there will be a judgment that comes upon those who perform lying wonders in the last days. All right, let's continue. But Yah strengthened the heart of Paro, and he did not listen to them, as Yah had said to Moshe. And Yah said to Moshe, rise early in the morning and stand before Paro and say to him, thus said Yah, Elohim of the Hebrews, let my people go so that they serve me. For at this time I am sending all my plagues unto your heart and on your servants and on your people, so that you know that there is no one like me in all the earth. All right, let's continue. And for this reason I have raised you up, in order to show you my power, and in order to declare my name in all the earth. You still exalt yourself against my people, in that you do not let them go. See, tomorrow about this time I am causing very heavy hail to rain down, such as has not been in Mitzrayim from the day of its founding until now. So I'm going to cause heavy hail, massive hailstones to fall out of heaven on the land of Mitzrayim. And now send your livestock to safety, and all that you have in the field. For the hail shall come down on every man and every beast which is found in the field and is not brought home, and they shall die. You better listen to what I'm saying to you. Go protect your livestock. Get them in a shelter. Make sure no one's out in the field when the hail begins to fall. Those among the servants of Paro who feared the word of Yah made their servants and livestock flee to the houses. Now this is really a foreshadowing of the mixed multitude that's going to come out of Mitzrayim ultimately when they leave Egypt. Not only the children of Israel, ethnic Israel, will come out, but also a mixed multitude. So we see here that there were those of Paro's servants who feared the word of Yah and actually began to do the very things that Yah said that they should do to avoid these plagues. Notice it says, those among the servants of Paro who feared the word of Yah made their servants and livestock flee to the houses. But those who did not set their heart on the word of Yah left their servants and livestock in the field. And really this is a picture of the judgment in the last days, when we see that those who paid attention to the word of Yah will be raised in the resurrection of the righteous, but those who failed to listen to and obey the word of Yah will be judged at the great white throne judgment at the end of the millennial reign. Then Yah said to Moshe, stretch out your hand toward the heavens, and let there be hail in all the land of Mitzrayim, on man and on beast, and on every plant of the field throughout the land of Mitzrayim. Then Moshe stretched out his rod toward the heavens, and Yah sent thunder and hail and fire came down to the earth, and Yah rained hail on the land of Mitzrayim. Thus there came to be hail and fire flashing continually in the midst of the hail, very heavy, such as has not been in all the land of Mitzrayim since it became a nation. It's never been like this. Hail and fire coming from heaven. And the hail struck in all the land of Mitzrayim, all that was in the field, both man and beast. And the hail struck every plant of the field and broke every tree of the field. Only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, there was no hail. Again, they were not appointed for the wrath of Yah, the children of Israel. Only those who would not listen to the word of Yah, the unrighteous, will receive the wrath of Yah. Paro then sent and called for Moshe and for Aharon, and said to them, I have sinned this time. Yah is righteous, and my people and I are wrong. Pray to Yah, for there has been enough of the thunder and hail of Elohim, and I am letting you go so that you stay no longer. And Moshe said to him, as soon as I go out of the city, let me spread out my hands to Yah. That's how believing Hebrews pray, with outstretched hands, not folded hands. Let the thunder cease and the hail be no more, so that you know that the earth belongs to Yah. But as for you and your servants, I know that you do not yet fear before Yah Elohim. Now, look at verse 33. And Moshe went out of the city from Paro and spread out his hands to Yah, and the thunder and the hail ceased, and the rain was not poured on the earth. And Paro saw that the rain and the hail and the thunder had ceased, yet he sinned again, and he hardened his heart, he and his servants, and the heart of Paro was strengthened, and he did not let the children of Israel go, as Yah had said through Moshe. Again, this is a powerful picture of what's going to take place in the end times. So let's go over to Matthew chapter 24, and let's read what Yeshua taught about the end times. Matthew chapter 24, we'll start with verse 23. Notice what it says here. If anyone then says to you, look, here is the Messiah, or there, do not believe. He's preparing them for the lying signs and wonders, because many people are going to be deceived following lying signs and wonders. There's going to be great deception in the end times. So he's saying, if anyone then says to you, look, here is the Messiah, or there, do not believe. Notice, for false messiahs and false prophets shall arise, and they shall show great signs and wonders. They're lying signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the chosen ones. The chosen ones need to be very careful to follow the word of Yah and not follow after lying signs and wonders. It says, see, I have forewarned you. So if they say to you, look, he is in the desert, do not go out. Or look, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe. Don't be deceived. For as the lightning comes from the east and shines to the west, so also shall the coming of the Son of Adam be. This is one of the signs that Mashiach has returned. That when he comes, he's going to flash across the sky from the east to the west. For wherever the dead body is, there the vultures shall be gathered together. There's going to be a great destruction of the wicked in that time. Yah is going to fight the enemies of Yah through his set-apart Messiah, his chosen one. Yeshua is going to lead the battle, and he's going to defeat the enemies of Yah. There's going to be many dead bodies there in the land, especially in the battle of Jerusalem. It says, and immediately after the distress of those days. Notice it's after the distress of those days. The sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give its light, and the stars shall fall from the heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then the sign of the son of Adam shall appear in the heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth shall mourn, and they shall see the son of Adam coming on the clouds of the heaven with power and much esteem. So that's what you're to look for. Don't be deceived by lying wonders. And he shall send his messengers with a great sound of a trumpet. Keep your ear listening for the sound of the trumpet. And they shall gather together his chosen ones from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other, and learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and put forth leaves, you know the summer is near. So you also, when you see all these true signs, know that he, the Messiah, is near at the doors. So that's what Yeshua taught about lying signs and wonders and the great deception that would take place at the end of time. Now, let's go over and read what Shaul taught. Let's go over to 1 Thessalonians 5. 1 Thessalonians 5, and we'll pick up with verse 1. Notice what it says here. Now, brothers, as to the times and the seasons, you do not need to be written to. For you yourselves know very well that the day of Yah comes as a thief in the night. You're prepared for that. For when they say, not when you say, this is talking about the unrighteous world. When the world says peace and safety, it will be at a time when the world is saying we have peace, we're all safe, and everybody's celebrating peace and safety. It says, then sudden destruction comes upon them. It doesn't say it's coming upon you. The sudden destruction of Yah is not going to come upon the righteous, but upon the unrighteous. As labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. The wrath of Yah is for the unrighteous. But you, brothers, are not in darkness, so that this day should overtake you as a thief. In other words, you're a person of revelation and understanding. For you are all sons of light, that's revelation, and sons of the day. We are not of the night nor of darkness. So then, we should not sleep. In other words, we shouldn't live our lives in a deep slumber, not paying attention. So then, we should not sleep as others do, but we should watch and be sober. For those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who get drunk are drunk at night. But we who are of the day should be sober, putting on the breastplate of belief and love, and as a helmet the expectation of deliverance. So we have an expectation or a hope of deliverance, because Elohim did not appoint us to wrath, but to obtain deliverance through our Master Yeshua Messiah. And so we saw it in the narrative in Exodus 7, 8, and 9, that when there was wrath being poured out upon the Mitzrites, upon the Egyptians, that same wrath was not in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel dwelt. And so we are not appointed to wrath. Let me read it again. Because Elohim did not appoint us to wrath, but to obtain deliverance through our Master Yeshua Messiah, who died for us, so that we, whether awake, that's alive, or asleep, that's dead, should live together with him. Therefore encourage one another and build up one another as indeed you do. And so that's what we're doing today. We're encouraging you with these powerful words of great expectation. All right, let's continue on. Let's go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and we'll start with verse 1. It says, "As to the coming of our Master Yeshua Messiah and our gathering together to him, we ask you, brothers, not to become easily unsettled in mind or troubled, either by spirit or by word or by letter, as if from us, as if the day of Yah has come." And so he's saying, as to the coming of our Master Yeshua Messiah and our gathering together to him. So that is the context of this passage. And he's saying, don't be unsettled in your mind or troubled by a spirit, some spirit interaction that might have said something in your mind or whatever it might be, or by word, something someone has said, or by letter, a forged letter, as if from us, because it didn't come from them. Let no one deceive you in any way. That's kind of the theme of this whole message today. Don't be deceived. Let no one deceive you in any way, because the falling away is to come first. The falling away is the culmination or the completion of those who say they follow Yeshua, but have turned away from the ancient paths of Yah. They're not following Yeshua in his lifestyle of Torah obedience. And through the past nearly 2,000 years or so, this group of people who consider themselves followers of Jesus are no longer following him, but they're following mixed up religion. And so there has to be a culmination or a completion of that falling away. So let me read it again. Let no one deceive you in any way, because the falling away is to come first. So what comes first? The falling away, the completion of the falling away. And the man of lawlessness, that's the Anti-Mashiach, is to be revealed, the son of destruction. So when is the man of lawlessness? Lawlessness means disobedience. So the man of disobedience is going to be revealed after the falling away is completed. It started 2,000 years ago, and it's been continuing all this time. But there will be a time when it is completed. And when it's completed, then the man of lawlessness is going to be revealed. It says the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called Elohim. And so the Anti-Mashiach and the false prophet are the fulfillment of the picture that was painted in Exodus 7 and 8 and 9 of the Mitzrayim magicians, because they exalted themselves above all that was called Elohim, or that is worshipped. They exalted themselves and said, we can do the same miracles as Yah. He goes on to say, so that he sits as Elohim in the dwelling place of Elohim, showing himself that he is Elohim. That's the Anti-Mashiach. So there's going to be a rebuilt temple, and he's going to sit as Elohim in the rebuilt temple, declaring that he himself is Elohim. He's always wanted to be worshipped. I'm speaking of Hasatan, who empowers the Anti-Mashiach. So the Anti-Mashiach is a representative of Hasatan, and Hasatan has always wanted worship, and so the Anti-Mashiach also wants to be worshipped. Do you not remember that I told you this while I was still with you? And now you know what restrains the coming of the Anti-Mashiach, for him to be revealed in his time. Well, what restrains the coming of the Anti-Mashiach? The completion of the falling away. For the secret of lawlessness is already at work, only until he who now restrains comes out of the midst. So there is a what that restrains? Look at verse 6. And now you know what restrains. The what that restrains is the completion of the falling away. And that must take place before the Anti-Mashiach will come. And then the he who restrains is the Anti-Mashiach himself, because the Mashiach, Yeshua, will not come until the Anti-Mashiach has appeared on the scene. Let me read it again. For the secret of lawlessness is already at work, only until he, the Anti-Mashiach, who now restrains the coming of the Mashiach, Yeshua, comes out of the midst, or comes out of the midst of the people. And then the lawless one shall be revealed. Then you're going to see him. When he comes out of the midst of the people, after the falling away has been completed, then you're going to see the Anti-Mashiach, whom the Master, speaking of Yeshua, shall consume with the spirit, or the breath of his mouth, in other words, with his powerful words, and bring to naught with the manifestation of his coming. So the Anti-Mashiach is going to be brought to naught with the manifestation of the coming of Yeshua. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan. Notice, with all power and signs and wonders of falsehood. That's lying, signs, and wonders. So Hasatan is going to empower the Anti-Mashiach with all dark power and with lying, signs, and wonders, and with all deceit of unrighteousness in those perishing. He's going to deceive people unto unrighteousness. I've heard people say, oh, you just want to obey those commandments for what? For what reason? Well, that's just the devil deceiving you. The devil doesn't deceive people unto obedience. The devil deceives people unto unrighteousness or disobedience. So when we say we obey the Bible and you say that's of the devil, you're confused. The devil has never deceived anybody to obey the Bible. Let me read it again. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan with all power and signs and wonders of falsehood and with all deceit of unrighteousness, deceiving people into disobedience, in those perishing because they did not receive the love of the truth. You'll be deceived into disobedience if you don't love the truth. You have to have a love of the truth. It says, in order for them to be saved. You have to have a love of the truth in order to be saved. And for this reason, Elohim sends them a working of delusion. Now this is from Elohim. For them to believe the falsehood. If you don't have a love of the truth, and you are being deceived unto disobedience, then at some point, Elohim's going to turn you over to your love of unrighteousness. And he's going to send to you a working of delusion so that you believe the falsehood that you are embracing, in order that all should be judged who did not believe the truth, but have delighted in the unrighteousness. You better be careful about what you delight in. If you're delighting in unrighteousness, you will be turned over to unrighteousness, and you will be judged for your unrighteousness. And so don't be deceived. All right, let's continue. 2 Timothy chapter 3. We'll pick up with verse 1. Notice what it says here. But know this, that in the last days hard times shall come. This is Shaul writing. For men shall be lovers of self, lovers of silver, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, thankless, wrongdoers, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, fierce, haters of good, betrayers, reckless, puffed up, that means proud, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of Elohim, having a form of reverence but denying its power, and turn away from these. The world will be filled with these kinds of people. For among them are those who creep into households and captivate silly women loaded down with sins, led away by various lusts. They don't have a love of the truth. They're just chasing after things that are shiny and bright. Kind of like what happened with Havah in the garden. She was talking to that male creature in the garden instead of going to her husband and receiving counsel. He was telling her what she wanted to hear. And she was chasing after the bright and the shiny. It says, always learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. And as Yohanan and Mamre opposed Moshe. So these two are said to be the magicians of Mitzrayim. And just as the magicians of Mitzrayim opposed Moshe, and here their names are being called, so do these also oppose the truth. They're men of corrupt minds, found worthless concerning the belief. But they shall not go on further, for their folly shall be obvious to all, as also that of those men became. Speaking of the Egyptian magicians. But you did closely follow my teaching, the way of life, the purpose, the belief, the patience, the love, the endurance, the persecutions, the sufferings, which came to me at Antioch, at Iconium, and at Lystra, what persecutions I bore, yet out of them all the Master delivered me. Again, we are not appointed to the wrath of Yah. We will have to deal with the anger of Hasatan and the persecution that comes from unrighteous people. But this tells us that our expectation and our hope should be in the Master's deliverance. And indeed, all those wishing to live reverently in Messiah Yeshua shall be persecuted. That's one of the signs that you're doing it right. I've heard people say, oh, all kinds of troubles coming my way. People are saying evil things against me, and maybe I'm doing something wrong. No, that's a sign that you're doing something right. But evil men and impostors shall go on to the worse, leading astray and being led astray. But you stay in what you have learned and trusted, having known from whom you have learned, and that from a babe you have known the set-apart scriptures, which are able to make you wise for deliverance. Wise for deliverance. Through belief in Messiah Yeshua, all scripture is breathed out by Elohim and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for setting straight, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of Elohim might be fitted, equipped for every good work. Now we're going to close out today's message by spending some time over in the book of Revelation, chapter 13. And we'll pick up with verse 1. It says, And I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads names of blasphemy. This is talking about the Anti-Mashiach. And the beast I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power. The dragon is Hasatan. And his throne, and great authority, lying signs and wonders. And I saw one of his heads as having been slain to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the earth marveled after the beast. In other words, who can kill this guy? Who can fight against him? And they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, Who is like the beast? Who is able to fight with him? And he was given a mouth speaking great matters and blasphemies. And he was given authority to do so 42 months, so 3.5 years. And he opened his mouth in blasphemies against Elohim, to blaspheme his name and his tent and those dwelling in the heaven. And it was given to him to fight with the set-apart ones and to overcome them. And authority was given to him over every tribe and tongue and nation, and all those dwelling on the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the slain Lamb from the foundation of the world, shall worship him. And so, there's going to be some wrath poured out on the set-apart ones. And for a season, it's going to appear that the Anti-Mashiach is overcoming these set-apart ones. But that's not how it's going to end. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. He who brings into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword has to be killed with the sword. In other words, there's going to be retribution come against the Anti-Mashiach. Here is the endurance and the belief of the set-apart ones. And I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. This is the false prophet. And I believe the 2 horns like a lamb. A lamb is like a sacrifice. I believe he'll be a religious figure. But he speaks like a dragon. In other words, he's empowered by Hasatan as well. And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he does great signs, so that he even makes fire come down from the heaven on the earth before men. And he leads astray those dwelling on the earth because of those signs which he was given to do before the beast, saying to those dwelling on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword yet lived. And there was given to him to give spirit to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause to be killed as many as would not worship the image of the beast. And he causes all, both small and great, and rich and poor, and free and slave, to be given a mark upon their right hand or upon their forehead, and that no one should be able to buy or sell except he that has the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. And there's so much there. We don't have time in this message really to get into all of what will take place. I have other messages that cover all of that. But both the Anti-Mashiach and the false prophet are going to be empowered to do lying signs and wonders. And the false prophet is going to do such great signs and wonders, he's going to deceive many to believe. Actually, he'll cause them to believe that the Anti-Mashiach is the Mashiach. All right. Now let's go over to Revelation 19, and we'll pick up with verse 11. Notice what it says here. And I saw the heaven open, and there was a white horse, and he who sat on him was called Trustworthy and True, and in righteousness he judges and fights. And his eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, having a name that had been written, which no one had perceived except himself, and having been dressed in a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of Yah. And the armies in the heaven, speaking of the messengers coming with him, dressed in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses, and out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall shepherd them with a rod of iron, and he treads the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of El Shaddai. This is speaking of Yeshua, obviously. And on his robe and on his thigh, or on his banner, he has a name written, Sovereign of Sovereigns and Master of Masters. And I saw one messenger standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the birds that fly in mid-heaven, come and gather together for the supper of the great Elohim, to eat the flesh of sovereigns, and the flesh of commanders, and the flesh of strong ones, and the flesh of horses, and of those who sit on them, and the flesh of all people, free and slave, both small and great. And I saw the beast and the sovereigns of the earth and their armies gathered together to fight, who sat on the horse and his army. And the beast was seized, and with him the false prophet, who worked signs in his presence, by which he led astray those who received the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. The 2 were thrown alive into the lake of fire, burning with sulfur, and the rest were killed with the sword which came from the mouth of him who sat on the horse, and all the birds were filled with their flesh. And so, yes, Hasatan is going to empower the Anti-Mashiach and the false prophet with power and authority to do lying signs and wonders, but They're going to come to the end of their ability, just like in the Exodus narrative. And they're going to see the power of Yah, our Creator, and they're going to be defeated in battle, and they're going to be thrown into the lake of fire. All right, we're going to just touch on a couple of more passages, and we'll bring this message to a conclusion. Let's look at Revelation chapter 20, and we'll pick up with verse 1. And I saw a messenger coming down from the heaven, having the key to the pit of the deep, and a great chain in his hand. And he seized the dragon, that's the devil, the serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. And he threw him into the pit of the deep, and shut him up, and set a seal on him, so that he should lead the nations no more astray until the 1,000 years were ended. And after that, he has to be released for a little while. Let's pick up with verse 7. And when the 1,000 years have ended, Satan shall be released from his prison, and he shall go out to lead the nations astray. That's what he does best, deceive people, lead them astray, which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together for battle, whose number is as the sand of the sea. And they came up over the breadth of the earth, and surrounded the camp of the set-apart ones, and the beloved city. And fire came down from Elohim out of the heaven, and consumed them. And the devil who led them astray was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet are, and they shall be tortured day and night forever and ever. And yes, Yah wins. He is the Creator. He is El Shaddai. He is the Almighty. And the devil and his cohorts come to the end of their ability, and they end up in the lake of fire to be tortured forever and ever. And then let's look at Revelation 21, and we will pick up with verse 1. It says, And I saw a renewed heaven and a renewed earth, for the former heaven and the former earth had passed away, and the sea is no more. And I, Yochanan, saw the set-apart city, renewed Jerusalem, coming down out of the heaven from Elohim, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the heaven saying, See, the booth of Elohim is with men, and he shall dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and Elohim himself shall be with them, and be their Elohim. And so those who lived rightly, those who did not take the mark of the beast, those who did not worship his image, those who stayed true to Yah, and who had a love of the truth, and looked for the coming of Yeshua, they're now being rewarded. And Elohim shall wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, nor mourning, nor crying, and there shall be no more pain, for the former matters have passed away. And he who was sitting on the throne said, See, I make all matters new. And he said to me, Write, for these words are true and trustworthy. And he said to me, It is done. I am the Aleph and the Tav, the beginning and the end. To the one who thirsts, I shall give of the fountain of the water of life without payment. The one who overcomes shall inherit all this, and I shall be his Elohim, and he shall be my son. But notice, but as for the cowardly and untrustworthy and abominable and murderers and those who whore and drug sorcerers and idolaters and all the false, their part is in the lake which burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. So those who did not have a love of the truth, those who believed the lying signs and wonders, those who took the mark of the beast and worshiped his image, will be left out, and their part will be in the lake which burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. And so we see all of this, all of these end-time events pictured in the Torah, in the narrative of Moshe and Aharon demanding that the evil sovereign Paro release the children of Israel from their slavery to go into the wilderness to sacrifice to Elohim, and the magicians of Mitzrayim, the magicians of Egypt, are going toe-to-toe with their lying signs and wonders. But the good news is they come to the end of their dark power, so to speak. They have to declare what's happening here is the finger of Elohim, and they are punished. They are judged with the boils that come all over their body. And we see it playing out as it pictures what's going to take place in the end times. So don't be deceived by lying signs and wonders, and follow Yeshua, the one who left an example of perfect obedience. And if you do, all of these things that we just read about will be yours. Hallelujah.